Hey everyone, so great to be here with you all and seeing so many show up for Apex 2024. Tokenized real-world assets has been a major theme in crypto in the past 1 or 2 years, and we have seen significant growth with now over $170 billion of real-world financial assets tokenized on public chains, including stablecoins. However, given there's over $1 quadrillion worth of financial assets that exist in the world today, we're still really only scratching the surface. So I'm super excited to be here on stage today with Graham Rodford, the CEO of Archax, who's actually one of the pioneers in the space of bringing TradFi on-chain and leading this revolution of tokenizing financial assets. And hot off the press, earlier today, Ripple and Archax announced a new collaboration with the aim of bringing hundreds of millions of dollars of real-world assets onto the XRP Ledger over the coming 12 months, and to really help position the XRP Ledger as one of the leading chains for real-world asset tokenization. So we have lots to talk about over the next 30 minutes, but let's start with Archax and yourself, Graham. So many may have heard of Archax, but some may have not heard so much about yourself. I'd love to have you talk a little bit about the company, its vision, and also what your story is, and why this all matters to you.
Cool, yeah, thanks for having me, great to be here. My name's Graham, co-founder, CEO of Archax. Spent 20 odd years in traditional finance, mainly asset management. I got interested in Bitcoin in 2013. CTO came to me and said, do you want to invest a bit? So started getting interested in the space from there, and kind of was a bit of a passenger until around 2016, 17, when the space started to pick up. So I guess around the ICO boom, and kind of noticed a couple of things. So one being that you had to learn quite a lot to invest in the space. I mean, not really that much, but you had to get familiar with terminology. It was a bit of a new trading class, a little bit inaccessible. And the other thing we noticed was that a lot of securities started to appear on chain. So it started us thinking, okay, this technology makes sense. Probably every financial instrument in this world is going to be on chain later. So why don't we develop a product that interests people? And originally we started trying to develop a hedge fund. And the idea being that people could invest in our vehicle and we would do the more complicated work. But what we noticed was that the infrastructure just wasn't in place. There were some decent exchanges starting to emerge, but the problem was that a trader could always just withdraw all the assets, and really institutions would never have invested. So instead, we started looking at if there's no one credible out there, and we believe every instrument is moving on chain, then what does that mean? And what we thought it meant was that every financial institution in the future is going to want to work with someone credible, and being credible probably means being regulated. So we went to the FCA in 2018, which was kind of before most of the crypto regulations were in place, and we said, look, we think everything you do is going to be on chain in the future. We want to start getting the licenses now. And some confusing discussions at first, but we applied in 2019, and in 2020 we got the UK's first regulated digital securities exchange, custody and brokerage license. And while we were doing that, in parallel, they brought out something called 5MLD, which is like a VASP license, and we got the first one of those as well. So the best way of thinking about us is kind of a Venn diagram of securities and crypto. We can do everything in both boxes, traditional or crypto, but where they overlap, that's really where we specialize in digital securities.
Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about competitors. Aren't you afraid or worried that basically the TradFi institutions you're engaging with may adopt your value prop over time, or any new entrants, or are you not worried at all at this stage?
Yeah, so we try and think about competitors a lot. It's quite hard because we touch so many different bits. So you've obviously got the traditional guys like the LSEs, NYSEs, NASDAQs, and then you've got the crypto guys like Coinbase, Kraken, I guess Binance and the like as well. But really what we found is the traditional players, they know this is the future and they're looking to be involved rather than be disrupted. But But the existing world's quite fragmented, so the LSE is just an exchange. They don't really have an order management system, a custodian, a broker all connected. They rely on the rest of the ecosystem. So it's quite hard for them to compete in this specific space. And then the crypto guys have been making so much money that going down the regulated route doesn't really appeal to them because it's been much slower. And also some of the things that they've done in the past make regulators a little bit more wary of them. So we've been able to operate pretty freely. I'd say there's a couple out there that are interesting. So Securitize in the US. I mean, I don't think they have a custodian, but they're kind of leading the way, especially in the US on the tokenization side of things. Then in Switzerland, you've got Six Exchange. You've got a subsidiary dedicated to it called SDX. And there's some in Asia as well that are starting to pop up, Hashkey and the like. So it's starting to gradually develop globally, but it's taken so long to get in place that we don't just have the regulations. We've got kind of 6 years of knowledge of this place of trying to work out how to navigate the ecosystem.
Okay, you sound pretty comfortable.
Well, we do the space moving faster, but I don't think people are rushing at the moment to build digital securities infrastructure. But now so many people are talking about it, I'm sure that's going to change pretty soon.
Awesome. I know all you guys want to hear about is this new collaboration between Archax and Ripple. So let's get into the heart of that. What does it mean more broadly? And also, what does it mean specifically for all the XRPL users and developers here in the room? Why should everyone care? What do you expect to see in terms of types of assets and issuers on XRPL 12 months from now?
Yes, part of the challenge that we've had is that working with the traditional players is a challenge. So we've kind of gone down the route of build everything yourself. So we've got the custodian and the exchange, and the bit that was really obviously missing for us was the tokenization bit. Now, there's quite a few tokenization platforms out there, and we gladly work with all of them. But as they all charge per issuance, and I'm doing things like tokenizing the S&P 500, it costs you a fortune if you work with third parties. So we decided to build our own tokenization engine, and within that we built the functionality we think is needed for securities. And we've known the Ripple XRPL team for some time now, and we've always kind of liked the technology as well. So we've decided to implement it into our tokenization engine. So what that means in terms of a product is everything we're doing is available on XRPL. So every security that's already available through us. So we've already tokenized UK equities, UK gilts. Aberdeen own us. We've tokenized their money market funds and BlackRock as well. They're all available on our platform now. And more specifically to the community, hopefully it means we're kind of more of a useful partner. So we already have XRP trading on our venue, so people can trade that in its simplest form. But if people want to create tokens on XRPL, they can do it with us. If they want to create securities, they can do it with us. If they want to custody them, we use Ripple Custody, formerly Metico, which is now all embedded within our system. So hopefully those that are looking to really work on the digital security space can partner with us and have easier access to RWA.
And also integrating some of the assets that will be issued on the XRPL in the infrastructure and the ecosystem of the XRP Ledger, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, anyone that's building on it can gladly work with us. I mean, we literally have the custodian, the exchange. We can admit these things for trading, whether they're crypto or securities. We've got our license in the UK. We're applying for another one in Europe at the moment. We're able to distribute into a number of countries. We're a qualified custodian in the US. So anyone working on securities who's looking for a regulated partner, hopefully we can help out there.
Awesome. How many funds or asset managers are you working with now? Can you talk a little bit about the pipeline you guys have and the existing partnerships you have in place?
Yeah, so on our site, quite publicly, we have Aberdeen and BlackRock's funds there. They're available. It's now possible to get them on XRPL. So there's 6 funds on the site, euros, dollars, pounds, different money market funds. But we don't put up there all the funds we have access to. So we've actually got about 80 funds available publicly. And that includes, everything, real estate, private equity, private credit, pretty much the sort of things that we would hold in our investment products like ISAs. They're the sort of things we have available. But we actually have a much longer pipeline. We're not public about. We like to make them available. When we first put them on chain and fired a seed investor, we've got about another 7 investment managers right now that we're midway through distribution agreements with. And I'm pretty sure at that point we'll have the largest range of funds on chain. So there's a lot focusing around money market funds and private credit, private equity, but there's way more beyond that.
Definitely feels like it's very much happening. In terms of like use cases, when you're engaging with traditional finance, TradFi, what are they trying to solve for their customers with tokenization? And where are they seeing like the most immediate sort of like successes? Curious to hear just in terms of like what problems do they want to solve using tokenization with financial assets?
Yeah, it's this kind of theme of crawl, walk, run's quite interesting as well, because I think the investment managers that are the most forward-looking are the ones getting most out of this. It's not just what it can do right now, but in the future. So, right now, I'm sure everyone's seen this in tokenization. People were kind of talking a lot about fractionalization and making illiquid products more liquid, so real estate was commonly talked about, but actually it's gone in the other direction. We're looking at money market funds a lot, and tokenized treasuries. I'm sure everyone's seen those sorts of products, and kind of why are they appealing? And a few reasons really. Stablecoins are about 140 odd billion, I think, at the moment, and they keep all the yield on people's products. So the first thing is, people are realizing they're giving up 5% of their money. So if I'm a crypto trader and I want to go risk off, then why would I hold a stable coin if I can be earning 5.5% in a regulated money market fund? So they've seen a bit of an opportunity there. Around that as well, I think asset managers are realizing that, their old way of doing it, lots of paper, lots of documentation is not the way of the future. They want to get their phone out, press buy. So they're realizing there's a new type of consumer and they have to lean more into digitization. So there's kind of some short-term reasons for that. Money market funds are priced at 1 as well. So that means, you know what they're worth at any point in time. So they start to be usable like stablecoins for payment. So that's why we're seeing a lot around that area. But it's quite hard still to find people that don't have access to a money market fund, but now want it. That's a bit of a challenge because the things that it's useful for aren't yet available. But the advantages in the future are definitely there. So again, if you're a hedge fund, what you'd typically be doing is trading all day long. And at the end of the day, if you've got cash in one of your prime brokers, you might think, okay, I'm not sure I want to take overnight risk, but you'd sweep it into a money market fund. When you do that, you suddenly kind of give up the utility value of the cash. You've just got, a holding somewhere. But tokenization of money market funds means, I have something now. I have a money market fund, but I can transfer it, I can spend it, I can use it as collateral. It actually has a lot of the same functionality of cash. So you start to realize that there's a world there where, if I can be in an investment product all the time that I'm not invested, then maybe there's less of a need for cash.
Cool. So it's fair to say, up until a year ago or something, TradFi mostly engaged around pilots using blockchains, and now we're really seeing this transition into actual production and, just kind of like harnessing the benefits of this technology, right?
Yeah, exactly. They almost all start the conversation now. We're not interested in a POC.
That's awesome.
We're not interested in a pilot. And there's a couple of ways tokenization has generally been happening. So one way, which is the most common way, is, Archax invests in a fund and we hold it. So much like the way stablecoins work, that really underlying is a load of fiat held in an account and each token represents a unit of that fiat. The way that beneficial ownership tokens or mirror works is that Archax holds the underlying traditional security and we create tokens that represent that. Now, that's not the pure vision, but the token that's created, ostensibly is the same as a pure token. It's still a security. You can transfer it. You can receive cash on chain. But the pure vision that everyone has is this idea of natively digital securities. So what that really means is the legal title exists on chain, not that Archax is holding it and we create a token.
Thank you. Just the last one on that thread. To me, it feels like the puck is headed towards, deploying tokenization on public or integrating with public blockchains as opposed to private blockchains. And I feel that's something that's really evolved. And the sort of watershed moment was with BlackRock and Biddle launching on Ethereum. Would you agree in your conversation this is kind of like, the direction of travel?
Yeah, I think it's the direction for sure. It wasn't 4 or 5 years ago, a lot of people were, using Corda or private chains, and we still see a lot of subnets or permissioned chains. But generally speaking, I think everyone kind of thinks of it broadly as the internet beats intranet. So, you're more available to everyone if you're on a public network. That's kind of the idea. So you still need to have AML KYC done. We use whitelists in most of our securities because it's easier. But you can see that being solved in the future with digital IDs and the like. But they're all talking about public chains. I mean, the Biddle case is actually a really interesting one. It's a great product. The Securitize and BlackRock created the fund in BVI. But what's particularly neat about it, I mean, it's got loads of pros and cons, but the thing that's really good about it is that you can send it to Circle and get USDC back at any time you want. And there's always been this conundrum with tokenized money market funds. If I hold it, then great. During the week, I can sell it and get stable coins and buy crypto. But on a Saturday afternoon, even if you had a tokenized money market fund, you'd have to go and redeem it to get your cash to buy crypto, but not with this product. 24/7, you send it to Circle, you get your USDC. So a hedge fund can be risk off, get their USDC on a Saturday afternoon and go trading. And the reason for me that's so exciting is they didn't have to go back to the traditional world. They didn't have to touch the fiat world. It's all self-contained within the digital world. So we're taking a lot of inspiration from that and thinking about how that future looks.
Great segue into stablecoin. As you know, Ripple launch its own stablecoin second half of this year. And so what role do you see stablecoins playing in all this?
Yeah, I think everyone puts things in the buckets, I think, or at least I do, crypto and stablecoins and then RWA, digital securities. But the reality is the securities piece, the real value only comes when you have something like RLUSD able to be used in line with the security. So, for example, if you want to have, everyone talks about atomic settlement, but when you go and look at most atomic settlement offerings in the space, all they are database entries where they're swapping beneficial ownerships of cash and tokens. But if you actually have someone buying an asset using a stablecoin and someone selling an asset on the same technology, that's something that didn't really exist before. In the traditional world, the fiat rails are over here, your asset rails are over here, and you have to try and make them talk. But if they're on the same technology, then you can ask questions. If you've delivered this and you've delivered that, then settle. You can start paying corporate actions using stablecoins. You can, part of the interest and dividends that now exist in our system, we can pay out in XRPL. So if you've got a distributing fund, we could pay RLUSD out as a dividend, or we could pay scrip dividends of more of the same shares on XRPL. So, stablecoins really are one of the big keys to unlocking this space. So, it's great you guys are going into the space, and great that Jack's leading it as well, because Jack's a great guy.
Awesome. Why have you decided to lean into XRPL? Why do you think XRPL is uniquely positioned to be a leading blockchain to help bring TradFi assets on blockchains, basically?
Yeah, there's techie reasons and kind of non-techie ones, I guess. The kind of non-side is we've known the team a long time, really getting well with all the team there, finding really open, and cross-border as well. So we've built up a relationship over 5 years. That's important for us. And then also the size of the company of Ripple, the balance sheet. It's important that the company's there and legitimate. A lot of financial institutions, if they see a small balance sheet, then it can concern them. And also the technology's battle tested. So it's been around a while. It's been used in anger. The uptime is there for everyone to see. So they're kind of the general reasons that we look at it. And then more specifically on the technology, it's fast enough. The transaction costs are low. There's no MEV issues that exist. There's trust lines in place, so things like the whitelisting I was talking about earlier, putting sanctions in place, they're all important. And the functionality that's being built natively on the chain, so you don't necessarily have to worry about people developing smart contracts and whether they're audited, but a lot of the functionality that we need is natively available on chain just for people to call, so it makes it a bit easier to develop against.
Fair enough. Shifting gears a little bit, and talking about the regulatory puzzle piece to all this. When you first engaged with regulators, how was their reaction, and how do you compare that to today's engagements you have with regulators?
Yeah, it was the first conversation was interesting because pretty much, we weren't that early, but 2018, most people at the regulator hadn't really seen this as something that was coming. And in the UK, we hadn't even started any of the consultation papers around digital. So a lot of what we were talking to them about was educational. And thankfully in the UK, I mean, it's principles-based regulation anyway, but a lot of what they do is tech agnostic. So we were very much like, look, securities are securities. This isn't a new asset class. I mean, ignoring Bitcoin, because maybe you could think of that as something different. We were very much there to talk about securities, so Vodafone on a blockchain, and we were making the argument, look, this is still Vodafone, it's still an equity. The only difference is your cap table is stored on a distributed ledger rather than on an Excel, on a piece of paper, whatever. So that they got that, and when we were going through the process, and they learned a bit more, at the same time, the kind of ICO market was taking off. You were starting to see some issues. So, thankfully, those issues only started to come toward the end of our application process when the crypto asset registration came through. And at that point, we got the first. And, obviously, we're very much arm's length from the regulator. But I think, we've worked well over time. We work well with the Bank of England, Treasury, and the regulator, trying to help them talk through new things that are emerging. So that relationship's been good. And then more broadly, I think across the world, you've seen all of the regulators move in this direction. Pretty much every country out there has some sort of crypto asset guidance, some sort of crypto regulation. Actually, most countries pretty much say securities are securities and we're tech agnostic. And now you're seeing things like the DLT pilot regime. You're seeing HKMA sandbox for stablecoins. You've got a similar sandbox in the UK and for market infrastructure. So you've gone from a place of kind of a little bit of reluctance to accept crypto, I think, to everyone thinking, okay, this technology is really powering everything, and the regulators gradually realize that they need to embrace it.
Continuing on that thread of challenges, it's fair to say there remain clear challenges. Obviously, regulatory aspects on a global scale being one of them in terms of RWA, mass adoption, using blockchain technology. Would you say regulatory challenges are the single biggest challenges, or are there any other challenges, threats you're seeing kind of being the showstoppers towards really significantly more scale? What keeps you up at night?
Yeah, probably nothing to do with this, but the biggest challenge, which is still ridiculous today, is banking. That's not just a securities problem. I suspect most companies in this room who are in crypto struggle to get a bank account.
That's a little bit contradictory, though, right?
Yeah,
you're engaging with or financial institutions on helping them to come on chain. At the same time, as a crypto native company, you can't get a bank account.
Yeah,
How does that make sense?
It drives me crazy when you see them sitting on a panel talking about innovation, but you can't get a bank account. And we're not just a very regulated crypto company. We're one of the most regulated companies in the UK. We have a full custody license, a full exchange license, and we can't get a bank account because people are still worried about crypto. And banks get to operate independently, so they kind of get to choose their customers. So look, that's a bit of an aside. That's a big problem for the industry that really needs to be resolved. I think it's even more of a problem in the US than it is in the UK. But since most things are in dollars, it's a big issue. Outside of that, everyone knows RWA is coming. Larry Fink's talking about it now. It's great. It's all there. But even though they're coming, building the full infrastructure is quite challenging. So, for example, let's say we tokenized Archax equity on XRPL. That's pretty easy for me to do today. Now, when you want to trade it on a secondary market, the rules in the UK and a lot of jurisdictions globally say you need to go and register that security into a central securities depository, a CSD. When you do that, a CSD typically uses old technology. So, I go there with my pretty XRPL token and they immediately put it back into an old database format and my token's kind of valueless and the core books and records are in the CSD. That's a problem. We're building a CSD out of Luxembourg. Hopefully we're pretty close to getting that license over the line. Thank you. That will help solve that issue. And the other issue is the one of liquidity. In crypto, it's easy to get liquidity. It's easy to get market makers because Bitcoin trades everywhere. So a market maker can hedge their risk, trade 24/7. If I go to them and say, hey, I've tokenized my house on XRPL, can you make me a market? They're like, well, I can't hedge my risk. I'm going to have a wide spread. You're going to have to pay me. It's actually really challenging to do that. So it's much easier if you tokenize something that's already traded or you tokenize something with good price predictability. So maybe a money market fund or the like.
Yeah. Sure, many in here echo some of these pain points. Obviously, we're very focused on the UK. Do you think, or do you see any other particular geographies where you think they're particularly ripe for RWA adoption, given regulatory aspects, but also other things like incentives to leapfrog in terms of technology adoption for financial prosperity, etc.
Yeah, it's well, we've actually got our European application happening here in the Netherlands. So we actually find the regulator here and the regulation to be quite forward-looking. Mm. And then obviously across the whole of Europe, you've got MiCA coming into place as well. So the whole of Europe's a pretty, good place to operate. I'd say though that there are those jurisdictions that are harder to get your registrations in than others. So I think there's a lot of regulation in the space, but there's a lot of people playing regulatory arbitrage. But I'd say generally Europe's in pretty good shape. Singapore and MAS seem to be charging forward. Project Guardian has attracted the interest of a lot of people. Hong Kong, Korea's moving forwards, albeit in an internal shape. The US, I thought, was really struggling to kind of find its footing, especially when Silvergate, Signature, and Silicon Valley all had their issues the other year. But then the BlackRock ETF, kind of has changed everything a little bit for me. I mean, it's the most successful ETF ever, which is kind of incredible. And I think I read yesterday they've got like 300,000 Bitcoin. I might have that slightly wrong, but the value of that is pretty obscene. I think it's something like 21 billion just in this ETF alone. So it feels like the US is gradually starting to move forwards as well. I think places like Luxembourg and I believe France, where they've changed the law to allow natively digital securities, you're allowed to have your equity on chain. That's quite important. But generally speaking, like the direction of positive trend in every jurisdiction is there. There's very few places now that aren't saying this is the future.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say it's just become too big to ignore. Also from a political point of view, I think the realization has sunk in that, hey, you can't just be blatantly against crypto because it may actually, impact the vote. And so democracy is really, a force at play here as well, which is good to see for us all. Now let's get the crystal ball out. This RWA hype has been around for many years, formerly known as STOs. And obviously it's grown, as initially mentioned in my intro. In terms of like looking at the adoption cycle, really 5 years out or whatever, like what do you expect? Where are we at right now? What do you see in, say, 5 years from now? And more specifically, end of 2025, like what's the total volume of tokenized financial assets you expect to see on blockchains in total?
I think we're still early in terms of the assets, but the infrastructure and the pieces are now all getting in place. I think the Biddle Fund we talked about earlier is $500 million alone. The Franklin Templeton Benji is like 350, and then you've got Ondo's tokens at like 150. So there's a kind of $1 billion in these treasury alone products developing. And then I don't know where crypto's at now, around 2.5 trillion, something like that. And when you look over at the equity side, you've got Microsoft, Apple, Nvidia, they're all like 3 trillion. They're all bigger than everything in crypto. Like the size of the opportunity is the largest thing that we've seen in crypto, the amount of RWA. So you don't really need much volume to be moving to make a significant impact. And if someone like DTCC or Euroclear says we're using a blockchain, then overnight all of those assets become digital. So I'm unsurprisingly pretty bullish on this. So over the next 5 years, I think you'll see more issuances becoming natively digital. It wouldn't surprise me if in 5 years' time that tends to be the way that most issuances are allowed. By the end of 25, it's going to be getting close to 1 trillion, maybe even up to 3, I'd say,
Excluding stablecoins.
Excluding stablecoins, yeah. I mean, the space is like 1.4 quadrillion or something like that. I know, and the existing financial market is one thing, but there's kind of a new financial market emerging as well.
Right.
Like metaverse loans, metaverse mortgages, like all of these things that never really existed before, and you put them together, the future financial market is even bigger. So, in terms of regulated products, I'm pretty comfortable that
sending more letters with emails rather than when emails didn't exist.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. It's on the record. Look, Kate, thank you so much for joining me on the panel. Thank you so much for joining us at Apex. Really excited about our collaboration, and actually with many of you together to really see XRPL lead the charge in bringing TradFi assets on chain. Cool. Thank you all for listening.